Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Serious topic today, so let's do it. Serious. What's the fastest way you've seen someone ruin their life? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Knew a guy who took a gun to our high school the day after Columbine. Immediate expulsion. The full spiral took a bit longer, but that decision ruined his life at 16 years old. A 16-year-old at the time murdered my friend's dad for money. He tried to hide his face, but didn't hide his tattoos. He was tried as an adult, and last I checked, he got something like 40 or 50 years. Sometimes I think about that and imagine what it's like to spend your youth in prison. Not that I feel bad for him. I'll start this by saying this is all info told to me by a mutual friend. An old friend who was 20 at the time. He was spoiled, but he wasn't an asshole. He's usually super chill and non-confrontational. He got crazy drunk at a party one night. Everything was fine and fun until his younger sister started telling him to slow down his drinking. She apparently either tried taking his keys or taking a drink out of his hand. Whatever she did, my friend ended up punching her in the face and breaking her nose. As far as me and our other friends knew, this guy had never been violent or the type to lash out. To say this shocked the people who knew him would be an understatement. Someone at the party took her to the emergency room while he tried to get in his car. Thankfully, someone else had managed to keep him from driving, and he ended up drunkenly walking down the sidewalk, crying. That same night, his parents called the cops on him and had him spend the night in the drunk tank. The next morning, they kicked him out of their house, stopped paying for his car, tuition, and cut off his allowance completely. He was broke within a week and was couch surfing for a few months. He allegedly got drunk and got into a fight with whoever he was staying with at the time and was back on the street. The last I ever heard about him was that he got arrested because his car was getting repossessed, and he thought it was a good idea to smash the windows of the tow truck taking his car. Oof. A neighbor in his early 30s. He was a master welder, had bought him a new house, had just opened his own shop, and was engaged. He worked hard, and we were very impressed and happy for him. Was on his way to the cabin for the weekend when he hit some loose gravel on the highway, dropped his motorcycle, and was hit by a passing car. Although he was wearing a helmet, he suffered a very severe brain injury. After recovery, he had lingering brain problems and his personality changed. He forgot how to weld. His fiancée left him and he lost his shop and house. He had to move in with his parents and couldn't work again. He lost everything from that one event. Very sad outcome for this amazing guy.
So, this one in particular, I feel like this is a motorcycle accident, and yes, it is a decision, but it's a little gray. It's an accident, so still sad.
Being seduced into a cult, quit her job, disowned her family, disowned her boyfriend, me, lost her home and savings, was reduced to evangelizing in the street, i.e. begging for donations, got hooked on opium and meth, fried her brain, and attempted suicide. Ended up inpatient in a behavioral health care facility, i.e. a mental hospital. Knew a guy in school, was sort of friends with him, but not close. We hung out a few times. He decided it would be a good idea to take his dick out and jack it in front of a group of 5 to 6-year-olds. He got done for it. His mom lost her job as she worked with kids. They had to move while he went to prison. Worked with a guy that was caught with a ton of CP on his computer. Used to do drugs with a couple a few doors down, coke and weed, sometimes LSD, but they were ex-heroin addicts and they got back into it. The girl injected heroin into her younger sister, 15, and killed her. They got some jail and their kid went into the system. Stopped taking his bipolar meds because he was feeling good. His wife held out impressively long while he threw away what was essentially his dream job and ruined many other relationships. Now divorced, surviving from manic episode to manic episode, ex-wife still lets him see his son, but he seems to be making every effort to burn that bridge. Not long after I got to my first unit in the Army, we had an E7, ranks are E1 to E9, got busted for cocaine use, 17 years in, 3 years till he could retire. Punishment handed down was reduction in rank to E1 and dishonorable discharge. Because of maybe one night of bad decisions, he threw away 17 years and got booted with what amounts to a felony conviction. I was hanging out with a lot of weird, insufferable geeks as a teenager. I was one too. We were kind of into a band. We had a lot of fun skipping school and making music. One of my friends was a musical genius, amazing guitar player. His band was actually taking off. They had just released a CD on a pretty decent label. He started doing amphetamines, got kicked out of the band, sold all his guitars, amps, and computers, and then set his house on fire and stabbed his grandpa, all in the span of about 2 weeks. Last time I met him, randomly he told me he was out of jail and living in a derelict van with his boyfriend.
The outcome and circumstances of the story are tragic, but not to make light of it, I can't be the only one that ended that story wondering, is the van down by a river?
A guy I knew joined the local police force. Within a week, the Florida nightclub shooting happened. He commented on an article applauding the shooter and talking about how he would have responded. Ended in a huge argument with multiple people online where he spewed hate and threatened someone. He lost his job and ended up being charged. Apparently some of the threats were credible. When I was an instructor in a drinking driver program, a young man, 17 years old, was referred to the program for counseling. The case had been handled by the court as a minor in possession of alcohol, not as a DD case. We had 3 one-hour counseling sessions in which to help the young man get a good look at his driving and its risks, instead of the 14 weeks and 2-hour groups he would have attended if his case had been handled as a DD. The young man completed his 3 sessions and made clear that he had learned nothing. A few weeks later, celebrating his 18th birthday, he got into his car and headed down a country road at 70 miles per hour and hit a tree. He was dead at the scene. Basically, anyone who only does coke on the weekends ends up spiraling out of control rather quickly. Seen it happen to way too many people in my hometown, and specifically this guy who I knew through some friends. He started his own business, was starting to really take off and making some real money for a 22-year-old, and he lost it all within a year of meeting a girl he fell for and got him to try coke. Within a year, he lost everything. He's in prison now. Basically, avoid that poison. My cousin was one of the nicest and most well-rounded people I've ever known in my life. When she was about 16 years old, she got caught in the wrong crowd. She would smoke weed, no big deal, and drink alcohol, still not the worst thing in the world, but worst of all, she let her grades in school slip and eventually dropped out of high school. Unfortunately, this was just the beginning. Long story short, her cousin, who is also my cousin, got her hooked onto heroin and meth, and her addiction became so bad, she allegedly had sex with that same cousin for drug money. As disgusting as this was, I'm mentioning it to illustrate how horrible the situation became. Now, she's been missing for just over a year, and we suspect she's now dead. Her father already passed away of natural causes, and her mom, my aunt, is so mentally unstable she can't think straight anymore. I know this sounds like an effed up episode of the Jerry Springer Show, and I wish I was making this up, but it sucks, and it has taken a toll on that side of the family. Her life literally went from straight A student to death in a span of 5 to 7 years. A mix of meth, having a really bad boyfriend who was actually still married at the time, wife is in the process of divorcing him, shooting a young man over stolen reptiles and alcohol. The cops were informed about it and were slowly getting to the stolen animals or items back, but the woman and her boyfriend decided to take matters into their own hands. The worst part is, it was the mother's boyfriend that pulled the trigger and murdered her son. Whoa. She even pointed the shotgun at her own son and gave it back to the dude that pulled the trigger on her son. They both left him on the ground in cold blood, and everything got caught on a doorbell camera. He had a son of his own and a girlfriend, and now the little guy has to grow up without a father. It's heartbreaking on all ends. So messed up. I don't know how a mother could do that to her own child and allow someone to hurt them in such a horrible way. Old friend of mine went from being an average teenage stoner to a friendless dropout drug addict in about a year. Guess weed stopped working as well as he wanted it to, So he started taking pretty much anything that wouldn't immediately kill you, got hooked, and let it ruin everything he had going for himself. I would say he's doing better, but all he did was replace the heavy addictive stuff with psychedelics, and now lives off permanent disability. His body might be physically healthier, but he's no longer who he used to be. He's one bad acid trip away from living in a psych ward. It sucks, because we were really close friends for many years, and the kid had dreams and goals. If all he did was stick with weed, he'd actually be somewhere and have something going for him, and not be living payment to payment in a dilapidated apartment, with his only hobby being taking shrooms and ketamine at the same time. In about 3 to 4 years, a young doctor went homeless. Here in my country in Latin America, I met a fresh graduate young doctor. He had what seemed to be a noble dream, becoming a doctor in the US. He saved a lot of money for years, asked his parents for some money, and asked for a loan, all to pay for the process of becoming a doctor in the US. I didn't know until then, but foreign doctors need to pass very difficult exams. They are super expensive, pay lots of preparation courses, traveling, living expenses, then you pay for clinical experience. Yes, you pay to work. And the most effed up thing, you pay for the application for medical residency, around $2,000 to $12,000 depending on how many programs you apply to per year. After spending around 4 years, not a single program accepted him into residency, and since he was a foreigner, the government would not allow him to get a job. He returned saddened to the country in early 2020, then COVID happened. He was in lockdown, jobless, indebted. His parents passed away due to the disease and became depressed and went into the streets. I heard he considered suicide but didn't attempt. I think he's slightly better, but it saddens me how things turn from good to bad by trying to achieve a dream. When I was 18, all of my friends moved into one house together to get out of the home in a way they could afford. It was great and chill, and I have amazing memories from the first few weeks. The place was a total party house, which is fine and normal for a bunch of teenagers with new freedom, right? Things escalated a bit too quickly though, especially once dealers started spending every night there. These once good-hearted kids were now stealing, fighting, and whoring themselves out to get their fixes. A lot of them turned to dealing themselves. I got the F out of there and never looked back after I saw someone get curb stomped. I genuinely don't know and kind of don't want to know what these friends are in life, but I think of them often. The ones I've bumped into look like shit, to be honest. Kids, be smart about what you're doing and who you're doing them with. Shit like heroin and meth cause permanent changes to your neural pathways, and I've seen firsthand how that changes someone's value system. Really think about it if that's who you want to be, and if it's worth it for you to before you go down that road. My ex was a straight-A student in high school and in university, also a college athlete. She was incredibly talented and had a full ride scholarship to Texas A&M, where she was pursuing nursing. A really sociable person as well. She could make friends with anybody and everybody. She had no reason to change a thing about her life. She was doing great for herself after 2 years of university. However, she had an annoying bug in her ear, her dad. The man was the epitome of a man who peaked early in life and had been chasing that high ever since. He served in the army as a young man and would never stop talking about it. He saw his army days as the greatest time of his life. Because of that, he wanted his daughter to serve. He always claimed it was for her betterment, but I know he just wanted to live vicariously through her. He used every manipulation tactic in the book on her. Kept telling her the military medical training was better than anything she could learn at school, a complete lie. He also convinced her that her athletics wouldn't last forever and she'd lose her scholarships, which was also a lie because she was damn good at what she did. Not to mention the guilt tripping he'd do, talking shit like, "The day you were born, I dreamed of the day I could salute you as a fellow serviceman." She and I got into many arguments over her dad because I could see, plain as day, he was manipulating her. She was already 2 years through university, and her better option was to stay the course. There was no reason to change. But she dropped out of university despite her scholarships and joined the Navy. I watched as her mental health deteriorated and deteriorated worse and worse. The military is not as bad as it used to be, but it's definitely not an environment where everyone can survive. She became anxious and depressed, The once confident woman I fell in love with was now a shell of her former self with little to no self-confidence. She had lost all of her motivation. Her original plan had been to just do the 4-year minimum active service and then go to med school. But last I heard from her, she is still serving because she didn't know if she'd be able to make it through med school. Her joining was what pushed us apart because she also became less emotionally available. This isn't an anti-military rhetoric or anything like that. I respect the ones who have served. This situation was a problem to me because it wasn't the right decision for her to make. She was on the course for a successful life on her own making. Now, she's on the course to being just like her dad. Serving was the only thing she ever accomplished, and she'll regret that. You don't know that. But mask the pain by pretending those who were the best days of her life. I always say, if I had a time machine, I'd go back and I'd have argued with her dad to get off her back. I should have done more to convince her she would be okay.
Okay, you could have guessed since I was grunting and groaning through the story I'd have an opinion. I do. I feel that this is a lot of your own opinion. Did joining the military ruin her life? That's your opinion. Did going to medical school or not going to medical school ruin her life? She could have failed there. She could have hated it and left. Did her father manipulate her? Maybe. Again, on your opinion, sure. Did it ruin her life? I guess time will tell. But as of right now, it looks like you're kind of blinded by your own wants for her life. Kind of like her dad.
Had a teacher, male coworker back in the day, report to a female teacher of harassing him at work, pinching his ass, feeling him up, massaging his shoulders, etc. She in turn lied and said he molested her in the stairwell. We knew it was a lie because she eventually admitted to it. However, the damage was done. He was immediately terminated, no questions asked, and, due to the nature of the field, had his record noted, he was terminated due to accusations of molesting a coworker. He was essentially blacklisted from the educational field after just starting out and accruing massive amounts of loan debt to finish his education. He eventually lost everything and committed suicide. Made the local paper. A woman I worked with showed up to work still drunk one morning and made an offhand comment about it to someone. It was 6 a.m. and we worked in pharmaceutical manufacturing. Word got out to the lead technician in her work area, and he immediately called security. She was escorted out and breathalyzed. Given what she blew, it's amazing that she was even able to drive to work. She was given the option of rehab or lose her job. She opted for rehab, didn't go, and was spotted at bars several times by various people. In 1997, my Uncle Terry beat 2 cops within an inch of their lives after they came over to investigate a home invasion. He was arrested and was sent to prison for 35 years. He died in 2017 of stomach cancer, still in prison. Terry maintained at the trial, and every day after his conviction, that he walked in on those 2 cops raping his 7-year-old daughter. His daughter says the same thing. Now that she's old enough to know what happened to her. Ruined his life, ruined his family's life. They had to move to a different state to get the cops to stop harassing them. Child-raping cops were made out to be heroes and celebrated all over the press. Last I heard, one of them was running for sheriff. A friend from high school, who was raised very Catholic and who has served mental health issues, got baby fever during college and would sleep with any guy she could get her hands on in order to get pregnant. Luckily, the one who did it turned out to be pretty decent, and they're married. Pregnancy destroyed her back and left her with crippling chronic pain, but because she's too Catholic for birth control, she just had her second. She really wants to leave the dad because he honestly sounds like a shit partner and shittier parent, but she can't because logistically, being a single parent with a toddler and a newborn doesn't work, and even if it did, divorce is too expensive, is it? To give you an idea of the speed at which she did this, we're the same age, and I just graduated college, and am about to move into my first apartment by myself. Best friends from 6th to 10th grade. We both were raised in homes with drugs and alcohol and violence. She was smart, a really good kid. We always swore our kids were never going to go through what we did, and we were going to go to college. She started dating a guy that was a family friend of hers when we were 16, older drug dealer. She got pregnant, dropped out. Our friendship ended, but I still stayed in touch. The guy ended up with some rare blood disease, got kicked off the kidney transplant list, and died from an OD when the kid was a toddler. She has 3 kids now, 2 with another guy that apparently beat the crap out of her before they broke up. She ended up with a record because the cops busted her family for drugs while she was around, and they all went down for it. That first guy literally destroyed her life, and her future was so bright.